The ethical dilemma of meat eating and its potential consequences for treatment of humans by higher intelligence forms. If we treat animals in a way that we make them and make them reproduce, we don't make the animals, they already exist, but we multiply them in a certain way, one could say, or we increase the proportion in terms of the overall Earth population of animals in order to then basically turn them into meat, so basically to kill them and then to cut them into parts and then to ship these parts all across the world and then to eat these in a pan, for example, then this is maybe to a certain extent what also another higher intelligence than us might do if it just takes the same approach. The main question is obviously to which extent is it necessarily first. So there are multiple questions to this. The first is to which extent is it necessary to eat meat, so basically to kill animals in order to do this. There also might be in the near or mid or long-term future the possibility to create something like meat or fake meat, not necessarily the meat that is actually fake in the way fake is usually used, but it is just meat that is not made by killing animals. The question obviously is then, how is this meat made? And there might also be ethical questions about this. If you grow an organ, for example, and then this organ is a muscle, happens to be a muscle because this would be lean meat that is actually high in protein, then, well, can you grow something like this? But if the previous allocation or situation is that we create animals and then kill them, then this might be a step up in terms of the ethical responsibility, one could say. Now, there's also the personal thing where you have to decide whether you want to eat meat. I decided for 6.5 years, or back in 2016 at the age of 20, to stop eating meat. Retrospectively, I have to say this was one of the least thought out and also very complicated. So it was one of the least thought out decisions I made, but also because the computation that was behind this, was just way too complicated for me to ever make it, actually. And so over time, it took basically 6.5 years for me to slowly realize that it's not in the 6.5 years that I realized, it was mostly in the end of these years. I never actually questioned so much the validity of the utility, let's just say, of my simplifying rule of to just not eat meat, mostly to avoid the negative ethical cost, one could say, of killing animals for the sake of my well-being. Now, I've tried over the years to come up with alternative solutions, but there are so many things that are related to this. One is that I never was able to perform as well, I think, in the last couple of years compared to these earlier years in which I still ate meat. There are also other polluting variables now, one could say, which are that I also began in 2016 to avoid eating sugar. So eating sugar sometimes might have resulted in a overall better health compared to me, the version of me that ate still sugar and also ate meat. But if I would exclude these variables that additionally basically polluted this one variable from, or the effect of this one variable to be shown, which would be meat or not eating meat, and also the different kinds of meat and how much, and lean meat, and of course this is again much more complicated than just eating meat or not eating meat. Because what does eating meat mean? Does it mean once a month, 3 times a day? So it is again not as easy. One movie that kind of sparked a little bit of thinking about this was Cloud Atlas, in which one of these worlds they visit. So the movie is with Tom Hanks, and this is kind of a futuristic scenario, but they also go through time, and then these characters kind of overlap, even though they are going through time. And in one of these futures, or in one of these scenarios, or in these worlds, there were servants who actually were kind of like humans, but then they were brought into a factory, and this was kind of the final achievement of their career, and it then turns out they were just killed and then repurposed. The materials were repurposed and they were made into new humans. To a certain extent they might have been, I don't know what these were, but it seemed to be the case, or at least seemed to me that the ethical dilemma that resulted out of this is, can you just create a human and make it think that whatever it does is purposeful, and that when they finally reach the goal, then just kill them and then just make a new version of this with the materials, which creates a kind of an ethical dilemma, one could say. Now, back to eating meat. I mean, the way we treat animals by killing them and then eating the meat is an obvious problem. And it is, again, not only a problem of maybe a shared responsibility, but also of a personal responsibility. One could, of course, say that the meat I eat is produced anyway. And if I eat meat or don't eat meat, similarly to voting or not voting, this might have a very marginal impact on basically the overall meat production. But at the same time, the overall meat production is kind of the demand meeting basically what is produced, not the demand. The supply, to a certain extent, has to meet the demand. Of course, there are multiple variables that kind of make this more complicated, such as it always has to happen in a chronological order. First the supply is basically there, then the demand only can happen, or it depends on what perspective one takes on this and all of these different things that are connected to this. Now, back to this main question. I, for many years now, have answered this question as with I shouldn't eat meat, but eventually I basically said, okay, my personal health I rank higher compared to the ethical responsibility I would have towards the animals I otherwise would constantly kill, because eating meat is not just killing one animal, but it's killing animals repeatedly. Every time I eat a chicken, or every time basically my accumulated chicken consumption amounts to one chicken, then I again basically have killed a chicken. Or a chicken was killed for me and I just bought the chicken, but the beginning and the result, even though they are connected through multiple nodes, are kind of still connected through this causation chain, one could say. And it seems to make sense. I seem to at least be in somewhat better health with meat compared to without meat, which is also the reason I am still eating meat. I also, over the last couple of weeks and months, slowly backed off again from meat, because I feel so unresponsible. Not unresponsible, but so irresponsible eating meat, and so guilty eating meat, that I again reduced it, which then also meant that I did have again a couple of negative side effects of this, because it seems to be the case that the higher the proportion of meat, at least if it is in a certain range, that then I have less cost of eating, basically, or of fulfilling my nutrient need. So the question is, to which extent one, as a personal or as an individual, not as a personal, as a person or as an individual, basically ranks, or to which extent one ranks the responsibility that comes with this, or responsibility, the ethical responsibility that comes with this, with the personal health. And in short, this one could describe as this problem.